1. Dan Aykroyd found inspiration for the movie in his family's history. Dan Aykroyd grew up encompassed by mystics. His extraordinary granddad, Samuel A. Aykroyd, was a prominent 19th-century clairvoyant specialist who directed seances at the Aykroyd family farmhouse in eastern Ontario with a medium named Walter Ashurst. This inclination for the paranormal was passed down to Aykroyd's granddad, Maurice, who was a specialist for the Bell Telephone Company. Maurice supposedly attempted to utilize his expertise to make a high-vibration gem radio that could contact the soul world. Dan's dad, Peter, kept a sizable library of books about creepy subjects, counting his extraordinary granddad's seances, which kept ghosts and demons in the back of youthful Aykroyd's psyche. After he left Saturday Night Live in 1979, he read an article about parapsychology in an American Society of Psychical Research publication, which enlivened Ghostbusters. 2. Ghostbusters could have been much different, and much bigger. Aykroyd discovered comedic motivation in movies like Bob Hope's The Ghost Breakers, the loathsomeness comedies of Abbott and Costello, and Bowery Boys' admission like Spookbusters and Ghost Chasers. He went wild composition his unique content, which occurred later on and had a lot darker tone. The entertainers he had at the top of the priority list for the three fundamental heroes were himself, John Belushi, and Eddie Murphy. His idea included many Ghostbuster gatherings battling phantoms crosswise over time and various measurements. The now notorious Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, which is in the peak of the completed film, showed up a lot before, on page 20, and was one of 50 enormous-scale beasts that the Ghostbusters would do fight with. Possible executive Ivan Reitman evaluated that the primary content would have cost up to $300 million to create, and that was in 1984. 3. John Belushi still appears in the final film, in spirit. Some portion of the reason Aykroyd needed to recontextualize and reconsider his thought, other than its improbable potential spending plan, was the grievous passing of his kindred previous SNL castmate John Belushi, whom he imagined as the wry Peter Venkman. The job was later deified by Bill Murray, another SNL alum, however the scholars still needed to respect Belushi by some way or another, including him in the film. When it came time to concoct the structure for the main Ghost the Gathering is appointed to bust, Aykroyd thought about a gross-looking, greedy, party fellow persona for the Phantom as an unexpected reverence to his companion Belushi. The Ghost made it to the screen and was later dedicated Slimer. 4. The movie had to be made in a very short period of time. Once Aykroyd nailed down the general idea and the account of the movie, yet before he'd wrote the last draft, he expedited Ivan Reitman, not exclusively to coordinate, yet in addition to offer the film to a noteworthy film studio. Reitman had recently coordinated the famous Bill Murray comedies Meatballs and Stripes, the two of which had been co-composed by another possible Ghostbuster, Harold Ramis. Since Reitman had an association with Columbia Pictures, which created Stripes, he moved toward down-to-earth studio head Frank Price with Aykroyd's crazy one-sentence pitch, Ghost Janitors in New York, in May 1983. While as a matter of fact suspicious, Price was pulled into the task on the grounds that the tripartite of parody masters who had consented to play the leads, Aykroyd, Murray, and Ramis. Cost asked Reitman exactly how much the over-the-top sounding film would cost, and the chief supposedly tossed out an irregular guesstimate of $30 million. Cost concurred on the financial limit and the motion picture with one stipulation, that it must have a firm discharge in June 1984, in time for the mid-year season. This was no little detail, considering this gave them just a year to complete the content, shoot the film, and make and completion the embellishments. The hurried generation plan quickly constrained Aykroyd, Ramis, and Reitman to withdraw to leased houses on Martha's Vineyard for a long-distance race 3-week composing session to finish the last shooting content. A short time later, they promptly started preparing the shoot and exploring areas. 5. Sigourney Weaver gave a unique audition. Getty Images. In spite of the way that the film started generation with its 3 leads previously cast, Reitman required the correct on-screen character for another crucial piece of the film. For the job of Venkman's hard-headed love intrigue, Dana Barrett, Reitman picked Sigourney Weaver. She was anxious to do a satire after her astonishing presentation as Ripley in Ridley Scott's Alien, so she took a stab at something inside and out various for her tryout. She offered up a silent scene where she transformed into one of the peculiar canines that do Gozer's offering, a demonstration that supposedly included squirming over the throwing love seat and noisily growling at Reitman. The chief was intrigued, if not somewhat terrified, and she got the part. 6. The part of Louis Tully was originally written for another Second City alum. For the lovable failure-turned-whacked-out evil presence keymaster of Gozer, Louis Tully, Aykroyd thought of entertainer John Candy. The Canadian humorist had recently worked with him in 1941 and the Blues Brothers, with Reitman, Ramis, and Murray in Stripes, and for Ramis again in National Lampoon's Vacation. Be that as it may, Candy imagined Louis as a stern German man with a thick emphasis who kept many canines in his loft. He likewise needed the character changed and made into a featuring job. Movie producers favored the first character that Aykroyd and Reitman had grown, so they gave the job to another individual from the Second City troupe, Rick Moranis. The soft-spoken, bespectacled comic brought his own image of maverick parody and comedy styles to the now great character, and he additionally gave his own closet. 7. Egon Spengler was inspired by a friend, an intellectual, and an unknown. When attempting to think of the ideal name for his character, who was the cerebrums of the Ghostbusters, co-essayist Harold Ramis joined both individual and scholarly motivations. Egon was the main name of Egon Donsbeck, a Hungarian international student at Stephen K. Haight Elementary School who was Ramis' schoolmate when he experienced childhood in Chicago. Spengler originated from German student of history and scholar Oswald Spengler. For the look of his character, Ramis duplicated the style of an obscure person he'd seen on the front of a dynamic engineering diary. He thought the man's old three-piece tweed suit, wire-edge glasses, and puffed-up hair were ideal for his nerdy parapsychologist. 8. Ghostbusters is thought of as a New York movie, but some simple movie magic went into making its various locations. Getty Images. Come to New York and you can visit some key Ghostbusters areas. The outside of the completely working FDNY hook and ladder number 8 working at 14 North Moore Street in Tribeca filled in as the Ghostbusters base of tasks, unquestionably not a neutral territory, as Egan said. The structure at 55 Central Park West housed the condos of Dana Barrett and Louis Tully. The fundamental part of the New York Public Library at 5th Avenue and 42nd Street is unmistakable for the lions guarding its passageway, and Columbia University's Havemeyer Hall filled in as the Weaver Hall Department of Psychology, constructing that the folks are kicked out of toward the start of the motion picture. At that point there's the amazing Eatery Tavern on the Green, where Louis was assaulted by one of Gozer's pooches. In any case, none of these spots show up precisely as they do on-screen. The inside of the Ghostbusters firehouse was really a deserted shoot station in Los Angeles, and the rooftop sanctuary scenes at Dana's loft were recorded at a tremendous set based in front of an audience 16 at Columbia Pictures. Enormous scale matte artworks were utilized for long shots. The early library scene where Egan is presented was in truth taped at the New York Public Library, however the scene where the three Ghostbusters go over the old curator ghost in the stacks was really shot the nation over at the Los Angeles Public Library. Essentially, the Sedgwick Hotel, where the folks bust Slimer, wasn't in New York by any means. The outside and inside shots were taken at the Millennium Biltmore Hotel in Los Angeles. 9. The ECTOMOBILE was one a kind, and then it broke down. Out of the bunch of notorious subtleties from Ghostbusters is the Ectomobile, a 1959 Cadillac rescue vehicle furnished with contraptions and doohickeys to help the folks pack bothersome phantoms. In a regular motion picture generation, a few comparatively decorated vehicles are utilized for expressive and protection purposes. The creation of Back to the Future, for example, utilized 3 diverse DeLoreans. Because the recording of Ghostbusters was so hurried, only one Ectomobile was assembled. Normally, everybody on set was extremely careful around the then 25-year-old Jalopy. While they dealt with the rescue vehicle with consideration, the vehicle stalled toward the part of the bargain of the Ecto driving over the Manhattan Bridge. Fortunately, this didn't occur until after fundamental creation enclosed by New York City, yet at the same time, the vehicle was DOA and wasn't accessible for use once more. 10. One visual effect shot of Slimer involved some spray paint and a peanut. Enhanced Visualization's boss Richard Edlund and his group, who additionally chipped away at such films as Raiders of the Lost Ark, the first Star Wars set of 3, and Poltergeist, were allowed just 10 months to plan, storyboard, fabricate, and shoot each embellishment in the film. The fast turnaround constrained specialists like Liveliness chief Terry Windell to need to think and react quickly, particularly when the due date got tight. At the point when a wide shot that highlighted Slimer rapidly skimming around a ceiling fixture in the Sedgwick Hotel scene wasn't turning out right, and time was running out, Windell spray-painted a little nut green so as to imitate the Green Fiend. The second's long shot portrayed Slimer obscured and spinny like. Share and subscribefo more great videos like this one.